So this is Nimrod here, and with a great pleasure of chatting with Mark Postles today. My morning, your evening, all the way over there, down in Australia. Thank you for your time, Mark.
Good to be here.
And it's such an interesting time for us. We're seeing that so many of us are noticing the stress and the crisis around us. And you're always one of those wise, deep thinkers that I turn to. So I'd be really interested to hear what your thoughts are on what you make of all of this at a time like this.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It's certainly a time where, when the pressure comes to bear, the true self is revealed. There's it's a great social experiment, and maybe even by intention. And if one was to look at the sinister side of it, maybe that's the case, or maybe it's biological warfare and our first little taste of that, or or it's just one of those cycles that we get every year. We get a flu that goes around the world, and this time we've decided to demonize the agent by calling it a virus instead of a flu. And so people have a lot more reality around that. They then can see that as being the enemy, and then because that enemy is carried by someone, that they also become the enemy. So we've got to isolate ourselves from those people. We go against our natural urges to connect and relate, and we separate and individuate, and that sort of plays into the hand of many people, organisations, and various vested interests. So, maybe there's a bit of that. What I do know is that when people get put under the pump, they either evolve or devolve. Significant science to speak to the fact that when people do get under stress, then they have a decreased life expectancy. That there is a phenomena that relates to this, which does create what's known as deaths of despair. It does increase relative to unemployment, for example, in fact by a factor of something 63%. So there's, I think, the greater danger or challenge right now is not the thing we're afraid of, but it's a fear itself. And I think that's it's been quoted a number of times over the years. So the opposite to fear, I think, probably would be love. And I think, it's been shown in from science to theology that love is heals all, and certainly been sung about. But the essence of fear is that separation and that isolation, and it's interesting. Actually, I did a little search on the number of times that fear shows, or a lesson on fear, and the point of the lesson being, do not allow yourself to be in fear, in the Bible. And coincidentally or not, it was mentioned. There was a word count done on it, and there was 365 times that the Bible says do not fear. So I thought that was rather prophetic. So in terms of a message for us every day, do not fear. And the opposite of that being love, and with that comes trust and vulnerability and opening up. And if we take on a notion that we are more than our body, that we're not human beings, we're actually being human, and that we have this we do this body as a manifestation. So if we want to look at it from a real high level, then none of us get out of life alive. So it's like we've got this little journey, and then we croak it. So from a position of that, we can say, well, it seems rather interesting to me that we're spending so much of our time, money, and energy on trying to make sure that the few people that are most vulnerable from a given situation don't get exposed to it, when in fact they only have a relatively few number of years to live. So let's invest all of our children's heritage in stopping the economy to then allow that to occur just doesn't quite ring true. You know, just I guess I can speak to that because I'm in my 70s. So I'm one of the old farts, and that doesn't really, it doesn't really matter if you've lived a good life and you can look at it from a more philosophical position. But it's just sort of interesting that we're not spending time and energy on our maybe all these cruise ships are around at the moment, putting all the old farts on the cruise ship and putting them out to sea, and let them be insulated from the vengeance of this invisible microbe, all this little thingo that we've demonized. So anyway, so I know. I mean, and I mean that to me would be rational. It's like, do you take the 10 or 15% that are at risk and isolate them, or do you take the 80, 90, 95%, whatever it is, 80% that aren't at risk because it's a benign situation for a healthy person, and do you isolate them? It's like, well, no. Anyway, so there's sort of a funny sort of logic that goes on, but that's that tends to happen when people get under the pump too. So when we devolve into our hindbrain, we make decisions that are we don't actually make decisions. We are open to having decisions made for us, and so we do things that maybe when we're enjoying the clarity of thought and we're in an ascending stage in our life, we don't entertain those sort of thoughts. So I find it fascinating just from a human behavioural point of view, and I guess the whole energy of a system that doesn't have us as more than a human. That is, we're just a bunch of protoplasm that sucks in oxygen and spits out CO2. That we've got to preserve it. We've got to help it, and we've got to fight death. And the mechanisms behind that, the care systems behind that, are all about stopping death and stopping pain. And whilst one might argue that they're honourable pursuits, what's bigger than that? And I think life is bigger than that. That love is bigger than that. And we honour people who have given their life for love and given their life for something of substance. And we have them enshrined and in monuments. And so human beings do subscribe to that. But when they're under the pump, those people generally devolve into being humans to preserve their life and accumulate much toilet paper as they can. It's just like pretty weird. Anyway, I find it fascinating. But that's just my weird sort of. Yeah, I think when we start drinking our own Kool-Aid, we start to see things in a different view, and we ignore other parts. And if you look at the shifts over time, you've got go way back into ancient cultures such as the Australian Aboriginals, and they're say 40, 60,000 years ago, and they were animistic. They saw God in everything, and they saw the life was within the land, and everything was connected to everything. And then we became really smart, and we said, no, that snake over there is a god, and this hill over there is another goddess, and this river here is a god, and so on. So that we started to see a polytheistic viewpoint come in, Greek times, and then we started to see the monotheistic process come in, that we worshipped a god that was separate from us, and there was only one God. And then science came along with the Industrial Revolution, and then the subsequent 200 years, and gradually the science has become the God. And so science then, or mechanistic science, reductionistic science, has become the God that we worship. And so as soon as we start worshipping something, we have a belief in something, we lose our critical analysis. So as each of those stages was evident. So that critical analysis, I think, has been lost because we believe in something. You can't criticize or be an analytical about something you believe in. You know, it's impossible. So then, but now we've got the quantum mechanics and quantum physics coming on the scene that's starting to explain the unseen and you know, the previously unmeasured and you know, the field that we're immersed in. And effectively what they're saying is that we now have quantum animism. And so we've sort of done full cycle in many respects. But with every transition, there's always a violent opposition from the previous paradigm. When a new paradigm comes on the block, it's like, you know, the old one will not let go easily. So I think we've got this situation where we've got an old paradigm hanging on. It's a communistic paradigm of sacrifice, and willing to sacrifice a few for the good of the many, and it's very happy to do that. And it's based on mechanisms that that physical things change physical things, and you know, you can't do anything else. You know, there's no room for love and compassion and connection and you know, those higher vibrations. So yeah, but then the quantum field is saying, well, no, we're part of a consciousness. We are conscious. We're all one, and that, you know, energy transforms. And so within that, then we've got a really interesting situation, because we're starting to, we know that we resonate with that. I think, you know, as a human being, we resonate with this innate wisdom within, and an integration of the human and the being. And you know, the being is the essence, and the human is the clay, and the stuff is just named after that. It's named after dirt. You know, humus is dirt. So yeah, the infusion of spirit into dirt is who we are. And now we're starting to realize that synthesis. And this is what chiropractic's contribution is. I think the chiropractic is said, look, right from the beginning, that, you know, we're one with everything. We're not, you know, it's not a hostile universe. We're part of it, and we are a synthesis of that. We're integral. And so you know, we then have the ability to do things that are way beyond the physical. And we are supernatural in that context. So the old guard is saying, no, you're wrong. We've got to, you know, we've got this virus and we've got to kill it, or we've got to get you away from it. And that the part that is exuding the innate expression is saying, well, no, bring it on. I mean, we work with this stuff. This stuff comes in, and we surround it, and we do what we need to do with it. And you know, as long as we haven't been messed up. Over time, the telomeres get shorter, and we do tend to lose function, and we start to wrinkle and sag and droop, and you know, and then gradually return to the earth. And I think we've found a way, because our focus during this mechanistic phase is to be fighting nature, fighting disease, fighting death. We've focused on infectious diseases being the hallmark of healthcare. You know, if we can stop infections, then we've done a great job. So what we've tended to do is, by virtue of doing that, we've sacrificed the future by virtue of chronic diseases. So we've increased chronic diseases by suppressing the body's and the person's natural expression methods. And so, you know, when you build up, it's like with a bushfire. If you don't allow backburning to take place, which happens quite often normally with lightning strikes and so forth, or deliberately with Aboriginal cultures, I know, have all forever, you know, for all their history of backburn, and they know that that's the way to allow the regeneration of the forest. And but when you stop doing that, you stop a child from having a fever, you stop a person from having a cold, you kill the bugs, you go antiseptic on people. They don't get a chance to deal with normal pathogens that are around them, and that makes them weaker. And atopic diseases and so forth become more common in sterile environments. And this is well researched science. So it's like, you can't have it both ways. You know, you pay the reaper. You know, at some point, it's like, do you have a little issue and celebrate it as a health expression, or do you suppress it and then you have a bigger issue and you curse it as a curse on you, and it's something out of your control. Well, it's not actually. It's something you developed over time. So so I think we're in this transition, and sort of, I know it's a long way of going about that, answering that question, but we're in this transition from a position of belief in science to a position of curiosity, a position of being open and vulnerable, and being the observer. So we're learning that, and so I would see that something like COVID, for example, is just a way, and it's not COVID at all. It's just like the way we're reacting to it. The way we're behaving relative to it. We're not looking at the cycles. We're not looking at the trends. We're not looking at even the locations and the groups. We're comparing a certain sector of Italy with another healthcare system in the other side of the world, in the case of Australia or New Zealand, and trying to make parallels there, and assuming that it's going to follow the same pathway. It might, but it won't be the same magnitude because there's a different demographic, So, so there's an interesting behavior that I guess you can prove anything with stats, if you want. So it depends what you focus on. So anyway, I mean, there wasn't any big hue and cry last year when 3,500 Australians died from the flu. Now there's 8 Australians have died to today and from COVID. So it's like, oh my God, this is horrible. This is a curse. This is a pandemic, and etc. So I'm not supporting the fact that we do nothing. It's just interesting of what we do and what we don't question about what we do. And that then comes to how people view their health and view their body. And do we buy the line that it's the pathogen that creates the disease, or do we look at the line that it's the resistance of the host that does something with that pathogen or not?
Yeah. And so that's a really interesting question for me right now. What we can do to help brought up a number of things that sociologically we're evolving in our terms of our mental state and how we view this world, as well as things like love and gratitude being bigger than the death and demonizing that we're going on at the moment, and also the fact of being human and the importance of that. So how can you break down what chiropractors should do to increase their probability of growth through this, and also to usher growth for the people and the communities around them and the world at large as a result of this?
Well, it's probably, I mean, if we look at, actions speak like louder than words. And I think, a lot of my observation is a lot of chiros give, they'll stand on platforms and give, big lectures on innate intelligence and universal intelligence. And then when something like this comes around, they close their practice. And it's like, that's interesting. So, I mean, we're here to, well, I would say that we're not here as a profession. I mean, sure, we've called it a profession, but we're here as a calling. We're here for something bigger that many of us resonate with, and I would say that's when we really become a chiropractor, despite the bit of paper, So I would say that we have this calling. So what is it? I mean, I would say it's something around reuniting. Which is from our heritage, it's reuniting our human with our being, and so that we can be with the infinite. So it's like that chasm between the finite and the infinite is something that we just need to understand. Which that's why I brought up the quantum physics thing, because that's starting to look at the infinite, and chiropractic has versed that for a long period of time. I mean, even chiropractic's position on like BJ Palmer said, while other professions are concerned with changing the environment to suit the weakened body, chiropractic's concerned with strengthening the body to suit the environment. And that's really the difference. It's about allowing our body to adapt and comprehend its environment, and not just our body but our essence. And so I think that's our great gift. So if we're called to that, we're resonating with that, then we just do what we can do to support people in that context. And like today, we had a few of our clients got really, really jumpy and, and think, oh, I better pull back in, I better not do any more coaching, I better close my office, better do this and do that. And it's like, there's like, 20% of our practice members have been laid off. And I said to them, well, what's the deal with the layoff? What are you doing about it? And it was like, well, I don't know, I suppose I could work out a scheme where when they get a job, they could repay me or something like that. And I said, well, maybe consider it for another position. That if you've got empty tables there, that's one of the greatest crimes I think the chiropractor can commit, is to have empty tables in their adjusting area. And so if you've got empty tables there and there's 20% of your practice that's not coming in now because they haven't got a job, or haven't got income, then don't you owe it to yourself and to them and to your maker to make sure those tables are full? So, I mean, the money always comes, but it always follows the service. So, and it may not come from the source that you think it should come from. So allow the money to flow by giving the service in the first place, and just being open, just being a conduit for whatever that return happens to be. And it may not be in the time that you think it should be. It may not be when they walk out to the front and they pay the bill. Let them go. Just give them pure loving service with the very best technique that you can find, and put them on a schedule that is appropriate for them. Don't short circuit and just say, we'll just get checked once a month and I'll sort of get you through. If they're on a twice weekly schedule, then keep them on a twice weekly schedule, and make it clinically relevant, and every step of the way as if they're paying whatever your standard fee is, because there's no such thing as a standard fee when it comes to life. It's above that, way above that. So I think that would be the viewpoint, that give of your abundance, and you can't outgive the universe. It's always keeps bestowing on you. So, and I think one of the big paradoxes there is that life is really, really valuable, really, really sacred, really, really important, and yet my life, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely, and I think bringing that perspective to us is so important at this time. So there's huge value that we have in our hands and our hearts, and as chiropractors, we can, even if we are totally isolated, we can then discuss, as we're doing right now, what you're doing right now is influencing people beyond what an adjustment would, even in terms of leverage and effect. So you can't contain it, because chiropractic is not a technique. It's not a modality. It's an idea, and this is what's if you look at all the wars in history, they've been about ideas. They've been about the thoughts and the interpretation of life. And one crowd think it's this and the other thing is that, and they go to war about it. And so ideology is massive, and any ideology that crosses the paths of a ruling ideology that's contrary to that is going to be attacked. So, and we know that very well from chiropractic. So, just getting out there and mixing. If you're in isolation, then obviously you have to do it by virtue of some other means where you're not touching people. And if you are in isolation, then get with other people in isolation if that's possible within the same house. Obviously, if one's in, then we're all in. So make sure they get adjusted, and that you up the vibration with love, care, consideration, compassion, and understanding of where people are at, because there's a lot of people that are really, really scared, and just acknowledging that. You can't just tell them, "Oh, get over it," and just get adjusted. That's not what it's about. It's like, wow, I get it. I'm with you. So how does that feel? What are you afraid of? And often just talking to a person like that will get them to a state where at least they start to become a little bit more rational, and then that's when you can actually start to bring about some shift with them, because it becomes more sort of midbrain and moves up towards the cognitive parts of the brain, and that's where people can then start to make decisions again. So I thought it was rather interesting. Like I've been up to the supermarket a few times in the last few days, when I drive to the office,
I usually take a shortcut through the, there's a liquor store, and I would go in the back of the office, and I drove through the other day. I thought, my gosh, is it Christmas Eve or something? There was just so many people at the liquor store with big trolleys full of liquor, and it's like, I thought, my God. And the government's closed down in Australia today. Many modalities and massage and things like that. But no, the liquor shops are still open.
Liquor shops are open.
So that becomes a rather fascinating thing. They go to the supermarket, and there's no toilet paper, there's no beans, there's no rice, there's no flour, sugar is all gone, and the meat's all gone. That's really fascinating. So I go around to the next aisle, and they have all the organic foods there. They're all there, like fully stocked. So, oh my God, I go around to the next aisle, it's all veggies. They're all there, green and beautiful as it could be. So, yeah, I think that's sort of indicative of the masses, and that's the world we're living in. That we've educated them through the TV, and they're now getting their information from the TV. So I think being able to work with people in our own quiet way creates significant leverage, like you're doing right now.
Yeah. So maybe just as a last closing question, if we are going to if chiropractors are going to take a message out to the world in a way that we can help the world bring in a new state of evolution, a new state of being, what do you think is a simple message that chiropractors should take at this moment out to the world?
Well, I suppose it boils down to trust. To trust your body, to trust other people, to trust life, to trust the benevolence of the world. And I mean, there's every opportunity to disagree with that. But at every opportunity, there's also an opportunity to do the opposite. So I think knowing that, even the most despotic of individuals or rulers and tyrants, there's a loving side too, and out of every negative comes a positive. After every winter comes a spring, and sometimes things need to be cleaned up, and we've got a world that's having it's like a family. The families have their tips, and we've been actually feeding on the richness of our ingenuity and our development, and the stock markets have been going crazy, and we've raised a generation of kids that live on their screens and are pretty precious about how life is, because they've just expected everything to be thrown on their plate. So maybe that'll turn around now. Maybe this coming recession will be or depression will be pretty significant, and we will have a chance to toughen up, to muscle up, to spend time with each other, to become our true loving selves again. So I think I see the gift, and it's and it's hard. It's tough when you see people dying, you see people destitute and living on the streets, and it doesn't seem fair. And then when we get outside of it, we start to look in, it's you start to see the balance in it too. So I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what transpires, and hopefully we'll be looking back at this and in a few years' time and saying, well, it's just an interesting little interlude we had there in 2020, and we're all so much stronger because of it. So I think that's the way it'll go. It's sort of like, there's a season for everything.
Yep, yeah, and that's very much my perspective as well. That there is hope that we will evolve to a greater state of being as a result of this. And what is our role in being able to usher that forward with the greatest probability? So thank you very much for your time, Mark. There's always some brilliant insights and wisdom and perspective on guiding us through all of this. Greatly appreciate it. I know that many chiropractors will as well. But thank you, Mark.
Oh, you're welcome, Nimrod. My pleasure.